hopeful. It kind of makes me yearn for the zombie apocalypse.
A zombie apocalypse is based on a fungal outbreak?
Exactly. Brain-eating zombie fungus in exchange for not having to deal with all this racial bullshit. I might actually say yes to that. We have been through big events, you know, 9/11, Great Recession, those things happened. Did they bring us together racially? No, I would not say that was the effect.
Certainly not 9/11.
Congress, median age 91, has recently learned what TikTok is, and now they want to ban it. Twitter's value has dropped faster than an old man's testicles, and we are going to talk about that and why that's happening. And digital blackface, is it a real thing and why not? But first, we should mention there was a horrible shooting this week in Nashville.
Anybody who's going to shoot up a school, killing 3 6-year-olds, that person is mentally ill. It would be one thing if it was a principled argument, but it seems that a lot of the people making these claims cherry pick when is the right time to be an individual and when is the right time to be an avatar for an identity group.
You can't always keep guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them. I don't think that means we shouldn't try.
Even parts of the developing world, you know, America really is exceptional in this way where we tolerate shooting after shooting after shooting in our schools.
You notice a difference in the way Twitter functions since Elon Musk took it over?
100%. What has happened under Elon Musk has surprised me. He has actually made the product worse and cheaper in every way, making all blue check marks be a sign of verification through subscription to Twitter Blue for $7 or $8 a month or whatever he's charging now. It's a joke. It's making the check mark, you know, like a fake Gucci bag and telling people, I've got this fake Louis Vuitton bag from China. Isn't it cool? It's strange to think that the wealthiest man in the world made a place feel like the cheapest platform around, you know? He's damaged his brand.
When he bought Twitter, Tesla stock dropped. Wow, yeah. What an amazing double play. You didn't just invest in the thing that you ruined, you also ruined the thing that you had that was fine. Are you on TikTok?
I can't stand it.
I got on and was like, this is the dumbest bullshit I've ever seen in my life. This is fucking stupid. And our next generation is fucked if they like this stuff because it's goddamn brain dead. That was my honest, curmudgeonly opinion of comedy on TikTok.
It's a weapon of mass destruction from China with love.
Even a Trump-led government is nothing like the Chinese government. My God.
Hi, I'm Thomas Chatterton Williams.
And I'm Jeff Chatterton Maurer.
I'm a writer.
And I'm a comedian.
And we host a podcast called Wrongthink, more of a question than a comment.
In addition to being more of a question than a comment, it is also more of a podcast we want people to know about than just two guys talking into a microphone for no reason.
So we'd like to ask you to please subscribe to the show.
If you like the show, please share it with your friends. If you don't like the show, then please punish your enemies by sharing it with them.
And also please rate us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get podcasts.
Grindr, we got a lot of listeners on Grindr. The Wrongthink podcast, thinking, except bad. Thomas Chatterton Williams, can I call you, you're gonna like this one, T-Rex Chatterwillsaurus. Is that okay?
My son would like that. He's in a dinosaur phase. So yeah, let's go with that.
Okay, then T-Rex, how you doing this week? You having a good week?
I'm having a good week. I'm back in the countryside after having run around, traveled a lot. I'm out of Paris.
Survived Paris.
Garbage is getting collected out here.
Escaped Paris. Congrats.
Yeah,
Congrats on that.
Up.
Hey, I got something that's driving me a little bit nuts this week. Can I share it before we get to stuff that matters?
What's on your mind?
What's on my mind is the zombie apocalypse and how it gets a bad rap. People always focus on the negative of the zombie apocalypse. Just the phrase zombie apocalypse, I feel like it's pejorative. I feel like we need a euphemism. It focuses on all the downsides. Let's talk about the upside of the zombie apocalypse. I've been catching up on The Last of Us. Have you seen The Last of Us?
I have. I've just read about how it was like the most successful video game in the past 10 years or something crazy like that.
Yeah. An enormously successful video game. Now there is a TV show on HBO based on the video game. Sounds like a bad idea. It's not a bad idea. It's like quite a good show. I really enjoyed it. It's done one season. I liked it a lot. And here's the thing about The Last of Us. It is endearingly post-racial. There are characters of all races, and they have all types of relationships, that romantic, platonic, adversarial. It's all good, and it's all uncommented upon. Thomas, it's kind of beautiful. It kind of makes me yearn for the zombie apocalypse a little bit.
You just need some type of massive catastrophe to get us over the hump of identity,
Yeah.
of identitarian, balkanization and zero-sum games that we play. You just need something to bring us together. A zombie apocalypse, like, what is that? This is based on a fungal outbreak. Is that it?
Exactly. Yes. There's a brain-eating fungus.
So we just need something like that. I mean,
we need a brain-eating fungus.
Yeah, or impending climate disaster. You would like to think that something could allow us to pull together, and we wouldn't prioritize.
I'm legitimately asking myself right now if I would make that trade: brain-eating zombie fungus in exchange for not having to deal with all this racial bullshit. I might say yes to that. I might go for that trade.
If it were temporary. If there were a cap on how long the zombie apocalypse could last, and we would get out on the other side, and we would remember the lessons that we'd learned.
Personally, I'm not going to put conditions on it. I'm not. Beggars can't be choosers. I'll just take the fungus any way you slice it.
I have to be a little bit doubtful, actually. I think that actually, with a lot of these things, we're learning that a pandemic, the possibility of a land war in Europe again, financial collapse, the possibility of climate collapse. These things actually are not changing our fundamental behaviors. You can imagine climate change, the water's rising, the water lapping up to our hands as we take the last selfies, doing bullshit on Instagram before it's over. You can also imagine the racism just lasting in the zombie apocalypse. I'd like to think that we'd be as good as The Last of Us, but I'm not sure when I really think of it.
It's true. In the real zombie apocalypse, it'll just be cockroaches and racism will be the only things that survive. Probably.
Yeah, people will still be finding ways to keep it petty, I'm afraid.
That's probably true. I mean, we have been through big events, 9/11, Great Recession, those things happened. Did they bring us together racially? No, I would not say that was the effect. I would say we're better off now than we were in like 2001, but was that?
Certainly not 9/11.
What would you say?
I don't think
9/11. No. To the extent that had an effect on race relations, it was not good, I would say.
Thrust us into about 10 years of identitarian warfare. 20 years.
Yeah, that sounds about right. 20. Yeah, we're arguably still in it. The theory that big terrible event equals racial progress, that probably doesn't hold up very well. Except maybe we just haven't had the right terrible event. Maybe the brain-eating fungus is what we need.
Maybe so. But I do like those shows that try to posit a world where, let's act as though race doesn't matter and that racial division has already been conquered. Let's just presume it's conquered and then show you what the life would look like under those circumstances. And it actually looks like where I'd really like to be. I don't understand why it doesn't catch on more.
I think there's a quiet majority and like a very, very solid majority. There's polling behind this that really, really would like to be post-racial. Of course you would. Like, of course, none of us would like to be limited by our race. We would all like to be done with all this bullshit. That would be lovely.
All right. So we just got to engineer the lab leak of the fungal virus and get it popping.
Yes. This podcast now has two uncompromising positions. We are pro brain-eating fungus and anti-traveling in the NBA. Those are the two positions we've spoken out so far. Should we get to stuff that matters?
Yeah, there's a lot going on this week, I think. I'm afraid.
There's a lot going on. We got to talk about Congress. Median age 91 has recently learned what TikTok is, and now they want to ban it. Twitter's value has dropped faster than an old man's testicles, and we are going to talk about that and why that's happening. And digital blackface, is it a real thing and why not? But first, we should mention, I talk about stuff that matters. There was a horrible shooting this week in Nashville. 6 people are dead, 3 of them children. It's obviously terrible. I wanted to talk about the reaction to that. I wrote an article a year ago. I put it on my Substack. It was called the Brooklyn subway shooting does not confirm your priors. And the argument I made in that piece was that our opinions should exist almost entirely independently of these relatively unique, terrible, visible events like a mass shooting or 9/11, which we already mentioned. These things are, to try to draw big lessons from these things, I think we are prone to trying to overlearn lessons from these things. And also they can, because the moment is so tender and so raw, they can be used as a political cudgel.
Yeah.
And we are seeing that right now. Because this shooter was trans, there are already people, J.D. Vance, U.S. Senator, so, not somebody you can ignore. They're trying to make the connection between, this shooter was trans, it's trans ideology, all that. I think our independent, whatever your opinion is on whatever you define as trans ideology, and how would you define that? It needs to exist separately from the shooting. I don't like the way people try to connect A to B in these times.
Yeah, it's sloppy and dangerous thinking. I mean, it kind of relates to something that's been driving me crazy lately on Twitter, which is this kind of spike in the virality of black crime videos, as though anytime an individual black person commits a crime, it speaks to a larger truth about all black people. Same could be said sometimes, you could actually...
Yes, that's annoying, not yes, it does. Continue.
Yeah. You could make the case that it's the same type of dynamic when one police interaction is made to stand in for the millions of police interactions that happen, in the country annually.
Right.
It's always dangerous to draw, universals from particulars. And this is kind of insidious because, we have so many mass shootings. And under so many circumstances, we say the person's a lone wolf, they've got psychological problems. We can't really say something larger about, what goes on in our society. We can't say something larger about the prevalence of guns in our society. This is an isolated incident. So some of the same people that would make that case when it's another identity group behind the mass shooting, so not when it's a Muslim, maybe, not when it's a black shooter, but certainly some of these troubled white males are lone wolves. But the first trans mass shooter that I'm aware of is suddenly not an individual, but an avatar of a group. We're talking about Audrey Hale.
And that's exactly it is.
Male trans person. It's interesting how it would be one thing if it was a principled argument, but it seems that a lot of the people making these claims cherry pick when is the right time to be an individual and when is the right time to be an avatar for an identity group.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? Whatever your position on the connection between rhetoric and somebody who does a horrible thing like this, that position should remain consistent. Because you're right. When it's a Timothy McVeigh type, when it's a white, right-wing anti-government, perhaps QAnon type, then there are people on the left who will go, aha, see, this was bound to happen. And then when in this case, it's a trans person, or if it was a Muslim person, you'd have people on the right going, aha, see? I suppose it would be possible if one had a consistent position of atmosphere, climate, rhetoric leads to these things. If you had a consistent position on that, I would say, okay, well, I at least understand that you believe that these people are a product. These shooters, these murderers, are a product of their environment. I at least understand that as a valid position. It is not my position because I feel that these people are, for lack of a better term, nuts. They're so far out there that to connect them to the real world, it's like, well, the fact of the matter is they're sort of unmoored from the real world. That is how they got where they are to begin with.
Anybody who's
I think you got to be consistent.
Anybody who's going to shoot up a school, I'm killing 2 6-year-olds, 3 6-year-olds. That person is mentally, by definition, almost mentally ill. So
that is my position. Yes.
I don't understand why we can't get to the point where we have a serious conversation about why, there's not a greater representation of mentally ill people in the United States of America than other parts of the world, but we have so many more mass shootings and we also have so many more guns in circulation. Why can't we talk about doing things to limit the access of mentally ill people to high-powered firearms as opposed to wringing our hands about trans ideology or other ideologies that are supposedly the problem here.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. If we dive into gun control, that's a long conversation, and we have a lot of bullshit to talk about. People might be able to guess, because of where I am on the political spectrum, that there are a large number of gun control measures that I would support. They are always going to... We did just have a gun control bill that passed last year. It did some stuff, some common sense stuff. I agree there should be more. It is always the case that you can't always keep guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them. I don't think that means we shouldn't try.
Yeah, I mean, they managed to do a pretty good job in lots of other parts of, you know, the developed world, even parts of the developing world. You know, America really is exceptional in this way, where we tolerate shooting after shooting after shooting in our schools, where most vulnerable, you know, citizens have no choice but to be. You know, I also have to say that I watched the body cam footage of this of the Nashville police taking down.
I couldn't
Audrey
do that.
Hale. It's pretty astonishing. I mean, talk about video games like The Last of Us. It looks like a video game. First of all, it's kind of crazy. But I have to say, the difference between the Nashville PD's response and like Uvalde last year, when they just did not go in and didn't want to go in and made excuses not to go in. I mean, it's astounding. These were really brave guys who rushed in. They ran in to danger and immediately located and took out the suspect. It's pretty impressive work. And, you know, it just underscores the degree to which, you know, the lack of courage in Uvalde was just appalling. I mean, if you're going to, one of the things that you come away from that video thing is, if you're going to sign up for this work, you've really got to be brave, but that's the job.
It's true. It's true. And you're right. Massive respect to the people who ran in there, and 6 is a terrible number, but a higher number would have been that much worse.
Oh yeah.
So credit to them.
I got to say also, it's a crazy way we live now, when this footage, I mean, the shooting happens and the footage is online and you're just watching the thing almost as fresh as it's still warm. You know, we live in a world now where everything is visible, and maybe way too much reality is visible. It feels hyper real.
I mean, you know, you say you're watching it. I'm like, nah, you're watching it. I can't bring myself to do it. I saw... It was on my Twitter feed. I could have watched the clip. I didn't watch the clip.
All over the Twitter feed, though. You know, it's not hard to find. This is a change that I'm noticing in the way we live now. I mean, it's not just that video is out there. It's that video is omnipresent. Every atrocity is anybody. I mean, anybody can see anything.
Let's talk about that for a second. The effect of video as a way of talking about what's going on in the world, because you already brought this up. There is that genre of videos of some black person somewhere committing a crime. And I have the same reaction that you do, which is like, come on, this is a big country. It's a big country, big world. Every day there is going to be some clown somewhere doing something awful. We now have video of it. Is that doing a lot to distort our perceptions? Because you're right. The way they're showed around is it's always somebody who, you know, they comment on like, wow, you know, look at what's happening now. It's like, man, that's always, it's terrible. Mm-hmm. It's always going to happen. It's a big country. There's always going to be somebody committing some terrible crime.
I mean, to put it in perspective, you know, there's like 44 million black people in America, a nation of 320 million or more individuals. The black population is essentially the size of like Spain. You know, it's an enormous population within the American population. And you know, to take these videos of, you know, black criminals in individual situations with zero context and slap them on the internet as though it says something larger about an entire so-called racial category. I mean, it's as though it's representative on a racial level is really insidious. It's dangerous. It's sickening. It has really changed under Elon Musk, I have to say. You know, I don't know if it's on purpose because this is a so-called free speech issue, or if it's the fact that, it's such a bare bones operation now that there are no engineers there to man the ship, and the quality has just gone down. But basically, trolls, racists, spammers, all types of bad actors, have taken advantage of this algorithmic, laxity. And so you just have racism porn all over the timeline now. And that's what it is. And it couples with the For You tab instead of the Following tab, where you're getting stuff that you never, from accounts you never liked, you never followed. And it's just, I'm seeing snuff films. You're seeing a lot of videos of, vigilantes killing mostly Black criminals. Marjorie Taylor Greene, our congresswoman, has retweeted some. I mean, it's really foul stuff. And these are edge cases. No matter what people try to say about statistics of Black crime, it's disproportionate. It's still a tiny minority of the population. And these edge cases are meant to stand in. And that's the unspoken, sometimes spoken part, is that this stands in for an entire group's criminality. And it's reprehensible.
We have statistics on crime. The statistics are what the statistics are. People are using these videos to whip up anger and, in fact, distort reality. And that is clearly the purpose of what they're doing.
And
let me say that racism porn is the one type of porn I cannot get behind. But let's talk about Twitter, because this is something we wanted to talk about anyway. So are you saying that you notice a difference in the way Twitter functions since Elon Musk took it over?
100%. And, I'm not somebody that was rooting for Elon to fail at all. I was actually thinking that the old regime had so much corruption, so much hypocrisy. Matt Taibbi and others with the Twitter files have shown just how much of a shit show it was behind the scenes. But what has happened under Elon Musk has surprised me. He has actually made the product worse and cheaper in every way. I was not a fan of the old verification regime because it was often based on, ideological consensus, or, people having been given, blue check marks when they worked as an audio engineer at Vox.com. And then, and then the process changed, and, they never made clear what the standards were. They denied people based on ideology, it seems. But basically, by and large, it was still a signal that, this account was in some way either notable or needed to be verified so it couldn't be, faked. And now what Elon is doing apparently on April 15th, making all of the legacy blue check marks disappear and making all blue check marks be a sign of verification through subscription to Twitter Blue for $7 or $8 a month or whatever he's charging now. It's a joke. It's like, it's making the check mark, like a fake Gucci bag and telling people that it's the same thing. Like, I've got this fake Louis Vuitton bag from China. Isn't it cool? It's just the same as if, like I had bought a Louis Vuitton bag, right? No. You can say that Louis Vuitton bags suck, but don't tell me that your Canal Street blue check mark means something other than this thing is tanking. And apparently there are going to be new changes in April. I'm sorry, the April 15th changes for only subscriptions can get the For You tab, which sucks and is a kind of awful innovation anyway, but also they'll get priority visibility and they'll be able to participate in polls. And he's basically trying to make the user experience.
Get a free cupcake on your birthday. I understand.
What's that?
Get a free cupcake on your birthday. I understand. All sorts of perks.
For $8 a month,
10% off at Jiffy Lube. Free biscuit with order at KFC. I mean, it's not all bad. It's an enticing offer, I got to say. Why do you think he's doing this? Why all this? This is revenue-based stuff. Twitter's thing used to be, all right, hey, it's free, but guess what? There are going to be a lot of ads in it. It'll be all these sponsored posts. When you're scrolling through, you're going to see an ad or three. Now he's trying to get people to fork over X dollars a month to get this blue check mark, which you're arguing is completely devalued, and I would agree with you. He wants people to pony up a couple bucks a month, the way you would with, Netflix or whatever. Why is he doing this? What's this about?
Well, Twitter used to be ad dependent and it still is, but the quality of the advertising has just gone through the floor since Musk took over too. Like,
I know. I think there are ads for this podcast on it now. It is shit now. Can you believe that? Do you think, are they worse? I always go right past them.
Big companies basically fled the platform once, you know, he made it clear that he was reinstating neo-Nazis and all types of people that you don't want your advertisement for Nike or GM.
Sure. Next to or Volkswagen next to a neo-Nazi. They're very
Volkswagen definitely doesn't need that. They're trying to get away from that.
Nazis. Yeah.
So now you've got advertisements for stuff you've never heard of that's crap, you know, like just really, really low budget ads. The whole place, I mean, it's strange to think that the wealthiest man in the world made a place feel like the cheapest platform around, you know?
Do you think it is partly because he bought Twitter for $44 billion? And this is not my world. I don't know this stuff, but I read a lot of people whose world it is saying 44 billion is way too high. And another thing I read this week, or maybe it was, I think it was this week, is that based on a stock option he did for employees, you can deduce from that Elon's present valuation of Twitter is 20 billion. So if I may pause the podcast for 20 minutes to do some math, I think that is less than half of 44. Is he trying to do this stuff because he made a terrible investment and now he realizes, oh my God, I'm losing so much money so quickly, I got to get some revenue in the door? Is that what's up?
Well, it's a bad way of doing that because the revenue is tanking. It's true that Twitter, he bought it at a very overvalued price and was guaranteed to lose something because Twitter has never been a money-making machine. But I'll just read, there was a very good article in TechCrunch today about, it's entitled Twitter is Dying by Natasha Lomas. And
right to the point.
Lomas writes, nor does this gambit look like a money spinner for Musk either. He's clawed in just $11 million in subscription revenue since relaunching Twitter Blue 3 months ago.
Let's reiterate that. That's 11 million with an M. So if you heard that and thought, okay, well then he's halfway to his valuation of 20 billion. No, no, that is not correct. 20 million with an M. Oh, sorry, 11 million with an M. Sorry, go on.
Per Sensor Tower. And the reminder, Musk paid $44 billion for Twitter last October and has already destroyed half that value, according to a recent leaked internal memo. So yeah, this game of pawns has been very expensive for Musk. It's an eye-watering lose-lose situation, unless you're a spammer, basically. Then presumably, it's a cheap way to spam Musk fanboys if that's a useful thing to do. Making money out of Twitter doesn't seem to be the point for the billionaire former world's richest man who obviously has wealth enough to throw plenty of borrowed billions down the sink. Although early in his takeover, he trailed or trolled the idea of transforming Twitter into a billion-user platform. But when it comes to growing revenue and users, we must all surely agree that Musk has been drastically, spectacularly unsuccessful. And, you know, it's funny to think that he was the world's wealthiest man. He's lost more money than any human being in the history of humanity, apparently. It's a fact. And Bernard Arnault, who makes the real Louis Vuitton bags, is the world's richest man again because he actually sells products with a degree of quality and luxury that make you feel like you're in a place that you'd want to be, even if it's a superficial kind of dream. Elon, for $44 billion, has made a kind of impoverished environment that makes it feel like you're in a place you don't really want to be anymore. And it's kind of amazing that he lost his spot as number one to the person actually making the real bags.
I definitely feel that Twitter is a place that I do not want to be. But in fairness to Elon, I felt that way before he took it over. You gave a pretty clear answer to my question, though. Is he just doing this for revenue? It sounds like, well, no. Or if he is, he's an idiot because it's not really working. It's interesting to me that he seems to be failing so spectacularly about this. And it kind of reminds me of when Michael Jordan played baseball. I think there's this psychology with people where they're like, I'm amazing at this one thing. Logically, I am amazing at everything. And I think that is just not how intelligence works. I think there is not such a thing as intelligence so otherworldly that it can be applied to any area. I think you can become brilliant at one thing, possibly two. But there is this hubris that makes people, like, it does seem Elon Musk in this case, think, look, I've had success before. I'll be successful at everything I do. I'm Elon Musk. I'll make it work. And he seems to have blundered into this thing without having any fucking clue what he's doing.
What's crazy is that it's also, and I don't think I'm alone here, it's making me even look at what he does well different. I look at Teslas differently now. I no longer desire, like, I used to think, if I were to get an electric car, I would be interested in getting a Tesla. That's no longer the case. I no longer have a desire to own Tesla. And I know that I'm not alone that way. He's damaged his brand. It's really
Tesla stock has dropped. I don't know if it's still down, but I know when he bought Twitter, Tesla stock dropped, which, wow, what an amazing double play. You didn't just invest in a thing that you ruined. You also ruined the thing that you had that was fine.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, I don't know, this, the past year exposed a lot of really successful and talented people as being interested in tanking their credibility and their likability.
Who else are you thinking of?
I'm thinking Kanye West was an enormous.
Oh, Kanye. Okay, sure. Yeah.
There was nobody asked him to do White Lives Matter shirts. And that just started one of the craziest seasons of cell phone imaginable for an artist that really, a generational talent. I mean, no one asked him to do it. It's really quite extraordinary. Sam Bankman-Fried, no one asked him to pretend that he was the world's, most morally upright citizen and the greatest altruist to ever lived, so that there'd be greater and greater scrutiny about him.
I see that one as I think that one is a little different, in that it turns out that was just always a front.
That was always a front. There's an
that was always just a front. There was no there ever. Kanye is different. Kanye was probably an incredible musician and revealed himself to also be a nutcase and has torched every bit of credibility that he once had.
Yeah. So
Sam
Twitter to succeed.
Bankman-Fried, it's more like he got found out.
He got found out. He was doing a Ponzi scheme, but you often get found out quicker when you insert yourself into debates like effective altruism that you don't actually need to be in to do your business, and then you attract greater and greater scrutiny.
I am really going to enjoy the Hulu documentary on Sam Bankman-Fried. That one's going to be almost as good as the Theranos one, I think.
Oh yeah, that was good.
Should we continue on to another tech-related topic here on Tech Talk with T-Rex and Jeff? TikTok. Are you on TikTok?
I can't stand it. I mean, that's the one where I really drew the line. But TikTok is kind of omnipresent, so you see it on other platforms, so you can't actually avoid it. That's unlike Twitter or Instagram. You see TikTok everywhere.
The youngs love it. It translates well to other platforms. I mean, I see stuff that originated on TikTok on Twitter all the time.
Exactly.
The youngs love it. I think it's idiotic. I maybe already told this story on this podcast, so I'll keep it brief. I'm a comedian. I'm 42, so I'm the older generation now. One night, I had a couple beers and was like, I want to enjoy what the young people are enjoying. I want to acquaint myself with the new generation of comedy. I know people say they're getting stuff from TikTok now. I'm going to go on TikTok. I had an open mind. Like I said, I had a bit of a buzz on, so that's the perfect climate to receive, perfect state in which to receive comedy. I got on and was like, this is the dumbest bullshit I've ever seen in my life. This is fucking stupid. And our next generation is fucked if they like this stuff because it's goddamn brain dead. That was my honest, curmudgeonly opinion of comedy on TikTok.
And everything is brain dead. I mean, but it's dangerous. I mean, you've got a very young child, but if you see your child from the age of like 6, 7, 8, 9 and older on TikTok, it's a terrifying thing to see the stupefaction that comes.
Are your kids already on TikTok?
No, but sometimes a friend will show them a phone and they'll see it and you just see their face change. It's a weapon of mass destruction from China with love. I mean, there is a real reason why in China, the exact same app is strictly regulated, like it's a prescription drug, and none of the crap that floods American screens is available in China. They get uplifting, patriotic, and educational videos. And the amount of time that you're allowed to spend on TikTok in China is strictly regulated. You can't spend more than a certain number of minutes on it a day if you're under 16. So the idea that it's harmless is laughable when China makes clear that they don't see it as harmless.
That's true. They regulate it tightly, like they do everything related to the internet. And this is kind of the issue here, isn't it? Because the reason we're talking about this is because Congress is considering a ban on TikTok. Specifically, what they're considering is they're saying to the Chinese company ByteDance, which is closely tied to the Chinese government. People do not seem to be making much mental distinction between the Chinese government and ByteDance. And from what I have read of the situation, that seems to be like a fair lack of a distinction in this case. But they're saying, ByteDance, you either got to sell TikTok or we're going to ban you. And there are two big concerns from what I can tell. Well, probably three. The third being just kind of like, does TikTok suck? Is TikTok bad for us? John Haidt, come tell us how TikTok is maybe ruining our kids. That'd be number three. That's sort of like unstated, I think. The two stated ones are, number one, data. All sorts of data that you use through TikTok is now possessed by this Chinese company, ByteDance. And that includes, from what I understand, from what I've read, and maybe some tech person can show up in the comments and say, no, that's not actually true. But from what I've read, I understand it's not just like what you clicked on TikTok, what you typed into TikTok, your physical location through TikTok, but also everything you type on your phone, which is pretty remarkable, goes to a Chinese company. And then the other big concern seems to be China's ability to be a gatekeeper of data that we see. And this is the one, the data one, I'm kind of like, oh, that doesn't sound great, but it sounds like there's probably a solution there. The fact that they can gatekeep information, I am actually quite worried about that. What if there's an invasion of Taiwan? You can think of a million scenarios in which there are things the Chinese government might not like us to see, and because they have this power of the algorithm, they could basically dial up or dial way down what we see through this influential platform.
Yeah, and I don't even want to know the number of Americans that primarily get their news through TikTok. It must be not insignificant.
It's 315 million. 90%. No, I don't know. I don't know what it is. It's whatever it is too high. It should be zero.
My friend Melissa Chen brought up a good point that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez joined TikTok to make this video about why we should not ban the app. And Melissa Chen tweeted that U.S. social media companies, quote, as AOC said, also do the same thing by collecting data, end quote, is a facile argument promulgated by those who, in essence, are saying there are no differences between a Chinese company and a U.S. company. That is a patently false legal and moral equivalency. She continues, structurally, there are fundamental differences. CCP members must sit on corporate boards, national intelligence law, counter-espionage laws, among others, that require TikTok to hand over data when requested by the CCP. Contrast this with U.S. social media companies where government agencies try to influence social media companies, see the Twitter files, not by law, but by covert methods of infiltration and hoping for willing volunteers inside companies. It's high time that we subject Chinese companies to reciprocity to stop this ridiculous asymmetry. TikTok itself is not allowed to spew the crap it does to the Chinese population within its great firewall. Why allow it to operate freely in the US? They can reach our market, we can't reach theirs. Make it conditional or ban it. What do you think about that?
Well, I was interested until the part where you said they can spew this crap to the Chinese public, but why do we let them do it to us? Spewing crap, I kind of am in favor of maybe not the spewing of crap, but the right to spew crap. I will defend your right to spew crap to the last man, to distort a phrase, just because I kind of what I really don't want is the government involved in deciding what we can see and can't see, which is exactly why I worry about the Chinese government's control of TikTok. The AOC quote, that's stunningly oversimple, and I'm not too surprised to hear that from her. I think there are two gigantic false equivalencies in what she said. The first being the relationship between the company and the government. It is definitely the case that the U.S. government will ask tech companies for things, and the tech company will say, no, you have to come with a subpoena. You have to get that subpoena from a judge. You have to go to a judge and prove that you really, really need this information. That is the only way you are getting stuff from an American tech company. And when I was at Last Week Tonight, I wrote a lot of the Edward Snowden stuff. I kind of got into this whole area. There are legitimate concerns here, but I felt that in that Edward Snowden era, we were too glib about how easily the government can access stuff. I really came to think, like, it's not actually that easy. There is actually a process. You can argue the process should be more stringent. You can argue it should be less stringent. But you do have to go to a judge and get a subpoena. That is very different than in China. So that's the first false equivalence. The second false equivalence is to say that the United States government is the same as the Chinese government. And look, I am wary of too much government involvement in any case, as I just expressed. I do think of a government led by Donald Trump. That is a government that I am, it's certainly prone to abuses because of who is the president in that moment. Nonetheless, even a Trump-led government is nothing like the Chinese government. My God. Do I need to run through a list of crimes done by the Chinese government? I don't think this is any form of xenophobia to say the Chinese government, Xi Jinping specifically, he is a hardliner. He is not like his predecessors. He is a real bad guy. He is doing all sorts of bad things.
His predecessors weren't so
running
great either.
what are essentially concentration camps. I mean, I'm getting all riled up because it's like, why do I even have to articulate why the Chinese government is bad? They're real bad stuff. So yes, I am really, quite concerned about their influence.
AOC is kind of a useful idiot here. I mean, it's just, it's the problem you have when you have influencers instead of politicians, instead of elected leaders who focus
men
on
and women
getting their actual job done as opposed to growing social media followings. I mean, AOC is fundamentally an influencer. It's kind of sad that, she joins TikTok, makes a viral video, gets more clout for herself, clout chases on this issue without thinking through why there is actually bipartisan support for taking some sort of action on an app that is at best stupefying our children, and at worst is actually a kind of national security threat. I mean, she conducted herself as nothing but an influencer here, and it's just really like abysmal. And I hope that actually, this is one of the things that we can come together and agree on. We're looking for ways to decrease polarization and unify, and I think taking national security threats seriously from both sides would be a good start. I mean, I am a free speech almost absolutist, but I don't think that free speech means that potentially hostile foreign governments have a right to propaganda. I don't think free speech means that Elon is a free speech warrior by flooding our minds with spammy bots and race porn. I think we can have a mature conversation about what free speech is without saying that everything has to be completely unfiltered, mindless goop. And anybody who complains or wants to restrict any flow of information at all is on the wrong side of that debate.
We've mentioned this before on the podcast. To be pro-free speech is not to believe there should never be any limits whatsoever on speech. It is unfortunate that I'm never able to articulate a clear absolutist principle in this area. I always have to say things like, I think social media platforms should moderate with a light hand, which I understand is disappointingly subjective, but nonetheless, I think people can understand the orientation that I'm talking about. And I think as far as TikTok is concerned, I think my position is a free speech position because my concern is that the Chinese government will decide, oh, protests in Hong Kong, we don't want people hearing about that. We're going to turn down the algorithm, you know? I don't know what kind of viral content would promote that. I am not AOC. I am not social media savvy. I don't know how to do it. I don't know what stupid fucking dance or challenge where you put a fucking, I don't know, a bunch of cayenne pepper up your ass, or I don't know what the kids are doing. They're doing all sorts of crazy stuff, challenges where you jump off a 20-story building or something like that. But anything that would drive attention to an issue that the Chinese government does not want us to know about, we're not going to see. And I think that's a pretty big goddamn problem.
I agree. I hope they ban it. I hope we figure out a way to salvage Twitter, which was really a great way of sharing expertise, even if it was always a frustrating place to be with really rude interlocutors. And I hope we find a way to stifle China's reach into our children's brains with TikTok. And if we could do one or both of those, I think we'd have a better social media environment.
The value of Twitter has dropped so much. T-Rex, maybe you and I could pool our money and buy it. What do you say? Do you have $19.9999 billion?
No, and unfortunately, I don't have enough friends I can ask to jump in on this with me. But
That's a shame. That's a shame. Well, okay, we'll table that idea because a lot of these companies are up for sale, and I think we should get in on that. I think it'd be a good investment. Let's stay in the area of social media and weird arguments. There's an article this week on CNN.com called "What's Digital Blackface and Why Is It Wrong When White People Use It?" Thomas, do you want to run us through? Actually, I'm not going to frame this as a question because I'm afraid you will say no. Thomas, please run us through digital blackface as described in this article.
So the idea that, Black people's, and oftentimes, let's be honest, it's not middle class, upper middle class, or non-celebrity, elite Black people. It's a kind of stereotypical poor Black exuberance that ends up in memes, right? Big expressions,
memes that.
Yes, memes of
it's these are the things. Let's remember that our median listener is 95 years old. Memes are, and they're going to love this episode, by the way. Memes, the things that people respond to, somebody says something on Twitter and then somebody responds with, I feel like all the ones in my stream are people from The Office. It's always Michael Scott going like, what the hell? Or memes.
Memes come in all shades. There's no racial component necessarily to a meme. You can have, you've got.
That's where you're wrong, according to CNN.com.
No. I don't think so. I think that what they're saying is actually that there's a type of Black hyperbolic reaction, wide eyes, a kind of African American vernacular English, gestures, dances, physical expressions that get memed and shared, and that white people can use to outsource a kind of emotional reaction, and also can be both participating in and finding funny, and also using as a kind of, I think, sublimated racism. There's an argument for that. This is not a new conversation. It cropped up again on CNN.com in this article, but for years people have been making this point. There was a writer, Lauren Michelle Jackson, in Teen Vogue, who I think coined the phrase. My friend Camille Foster has spoken on this in the past. Ben Shapiro had a kind of interesting video response to this on his televised podcast, and he said, it's ridiculous. There is no, America is so not racist anymore that you have to go looking for racism and creating new racism, because there's actually, in fact, a dearth of racism, a racism shortage in the country. I think that this is one of those issues where I mostly agree with Ben, but I have to be honest and say there is a point. I think that they're not all, and it's actually racist to think that Black people have to be protected from certain things, that, memes are funny. Using a white person on a meme is harmless. Using an Asian person on a meme is halfway harmless. And using a Black person in a meme is racist and cannot be done by anybody not Black. I think that when you make those kind of rules, that necessarily actually that necessarily makes race a central category that we still can't get past. It keeps us stuck in race thinking in a way that's unhealthy, and it keeps us paranoid and suspicious of each other. However, I can't deny that I think there are people who use these memes in a specifically racist way that we don't use white people being hyperbolic. And maybe there are ways that Asians are used in racist memes as well, but specifically a Black way. It's a kind of, it can be racist. Let's just be, if anyone's ever gone on 4chan.
There's a grain of truth. There's a grain of truth there. There's a grain of truth there. I thought this article made a real poor argument, but I will agree that there's a grain of truth there. And I want to make sure that we cover, for people who didn't read this article, I got to make sure that we make it clear what the hell they're talking about. This article argues, and we should probably just dodge the phrase digital blackface, partly because people have used it to refer to something else. People have used it to refer to when a white person will get on Twitter with an avatar of a Black person and pretend to be Black. That's not what they're talking about here. And also, I think you can argue that digital blackface is too hyperbolic of a term for what they're talking about. But let's ignore that. What this article is about is using a meme to respond to something. And Thomas, you're right, that they are often talking about a meme that is a Black person having like a big reaction to something. It's a Black person having like a big reaction to something, and it might be a Black person who is, they're not famous. They are probably poor. They are using, as you said, Black vernacular. I feel like there is a grain of truth there. I feel like it's the equivalent of like if you did like a real like white rednecky kind of Florida man. If it was a guy like maybe he's missing some teeth and he's got like a trucker hat and a mullet or whatever, shirtless, and was just saying it's always people who are like they were on the local news. That's why this clip exists. They were on the local news. And just says something dumb. Like I can understand how you would see that and feel like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing there. You're doing kind of like a redneck thing. When you take the Black equivalent of that guy, I understand how you can react to that with, okay, I see what you're doing there. You're doing like kind of a Black minstrelly type thing. I get that. I get that is kind of a thing.
There are classic examples, like the girl who was talking about her eyebrows being on fleek.
We in this beach, finna get crunk. Eyebrows on fleek, the fuck?
And that gets, and there was a kind of nationwide rejoicing in using her voice, her linguistic stylings, her kind of funny looking appearance as a way of, expressing all types of things for people who were kind of wink, wink laughing at it, as well as, the fact that it's funny. And this is why it gets tricky. It's really funny. And if we're treating people as equals and respecting that everybody can be funny, then you shouldn't say that you can never laugh at a poor Black person, because actually, they can be funny too, but there's also remember that guy, Antoine Dodson, hide your kids, hide your wife. Do you remember this?
I don't remember that guy.
Super viral video when he was interviewed after a crime somewhere in the South.
So y'all need to hide your kids, hide your wife, and hide your husband, because they raping everybody out here.
There's countless examples. If you go on YouTube, you see all these videos of people getting interviewed on the local news that go viral and they become memeified. And it's one of those issues where I would say that, I think there is some racism there. I think there's not always racism there. It's not by definition racist. And so it's one of those things we can never fully know. And so it's one of those things we just have to say, human life and human psychology is messy, and there are conflicting motives, and we'll never fully know other people's motives. And let's just not concern ourselves with some of this stuff. I think that you can't police every little corner of the human psyche and make rules about how people can act. And, these kind of articles that are against digital blackface, they get into a kind of school marmish, everybody has to, get on the same page about what is racist and what isn't racist. And I think it's not realistic, and we should just not concern ourselves with all of this stuff.
Well, and also just the headline, what is digital blackface and why is it wrong when white people use it? Okay. Conceding that there is a bit of a thing where, all right, if you're using some of these memes, some of them might have a racial element to that. Conceding that point, if it's wrong to kind of use someone in that way and laugh at them in that way, and I agree, you can laugh at a poor black person if you're not laughing at them for being poor or for being black. Everybody can be funny. Everybody can be funny. If that's not allowed, then like you're saying the person's a protected person, and that's because they're so fragile and weak, and that's fucked up. But if there's something kind of like not good about using these memes, and I agree that there's not, then it's kind of not good when anyone uses them, right? And I understand why it might be worse when a white person uses it. But if it's just kind of like, hey, that's not our best foot forward, could you just kind of cool it? That should be a universal rule, right?
Well, yeah.
It just seemed like this article is so frequently overstepping. And go ahead.
I really agree with you.
You were saying you agree with me, so please go ahead.
I would say that's the same issue you have with the N-word. It's kind of silly and unrealistic and untenable to say that, certain identity groups have the right to say things that are reprehensible and cannot be said by other people, and that there should be a kind of identity-based policing on certain cultural behaviors, expressions, manners. It's not going to happen. So people are going to be continuously policing. It's either, you try to make, distinctions based on what seems to be motivated by ill intent or not. And that's going to be a case by case, necessarily imperfect judgment call. And you kind of move on, or nobody does it. But then you would have to have, lots of black people on Twitter. Black Twitter originates most of these memes. Black Twitter's not doing this behind closed doors. It's public. So you can't kind of throw things out into the ether and then say, but don't touch it. And of course, most black people aren't actually saying that. Most black people, I think most users of Black Twitter have, profound senses of humor and aren't, the school marms writing articles on CNN.com about don't use the on fleek meme. I don't think that that's actually accurate to say black people are shattered by the use of memes. It's also this, weird situation we're in now where people speak on behalf of black people and say how we must be protected, but I'm not even sure that's that there's demand for those op-eds in CNN on CNN.com in the first place.
I'm sure. Yeah, there might not be. Because you and I both work in media, we should both point out that one of the dynamics here with these articles getting written is, look, you're a writer, you're trying to figure out what will they publish? What
you got to
what will my editor go for? And a lot of times you just pitch fucking anything. And maybe your editor, maybe this writer, maybe he pitched this article and it was one of 20 that he pitched and his editor said, yeah. And he went, that one? But he wrote it up anyway because it's your job. How many pieces did I write on Last Week Tonight that I was like, that one? We're doing that one? But you write it because it's your job.
And then it's a national conversation. And then it's a national conversation, and here we are.
Yeah. I do think they overstepped so bad. I say they because he interviewed people in the article. So there's just a lot of overstepping. It is a meme, as you pointed out. So it's kind of weird to say, like, boy, the people in these memes, it's like they're having really big reactions, and they're kind of inherently funny. It's like, yeah, that's kind of what a meme is. You kind of wouldn't become a meme if you were a normal person stating something in a sound way. I also thought it was weird. At one point, like in the second half of the article, they're kind of getting into stereotypes and, how you might use somebody who is maybe not the best representation of a group, and maybe they're used in kind of a minstrelly kind of way. And that's the part I kind of get. But in the first part of the article, they said, white people using black memes. Like, for example, Michael Jordan crying or Tyra Banks on ridiculous. America's Next Top Model. It's like these are successful, powerful people on fucking television shows.
I was rooting for you. We were all rooting for you. How dare you?
So it seemed like they didn't even know what rule they were trying to establish.
Yeah, I was trying to speak specifically about poor Black people interviewed on, local news or things, or who have uploaded videos of themselves that go viral, because that's much more to the point. The idea that Michael Jordan crying the way he did is off limits because of his race is insane. He's one of the most, generationally important people of an entire era. He's hugely famous and successful and strong enough to take a joke. And, his crying was hilarious. Yeah. And if Tom Brady did it, he'd be memed too. So it's ridiculous that that's like one of the examples. But it's like a lot of this stuff, it is complicated and you can't quite put your finger on where the line is. So I wouldn't go as far as Ben. Ben makes a good point to an extent, but I wouldn't go as far as he does, because I don't think you can categorically say, there's no racism here. That's a bit too strong of a statement. Mm-hmm. I just think sometimes, John McWhorter makes this point, and it's pretty true. There's going to be some element of racism. We're not going to eradicate every last drop of racism. Can you survive? Can you get through your day with, a degree of digital blackface? It certainly is something that bothers me a lot less than the kind of crime videos that are being uploaded and the actual racism porn that goes on. You could say it's a continuum, but, I think I can survive with a little bit of, ambiguity behind the posting of hilarious hyperbolic memes. It's just not one of the things that I think we're ever going to eradicate. And then we have to make our conversation around race a bit more mature than that.
Yeah, I completely understand what you're saying. Nonetheless, I'll bet we're talking about this for years, if not decades to come. Thomas, I'm glad you're back in the States. I'm glad you survived that horrible, horrible foreign country where your wife makes you live that is full of, by your own description, riots and trash. That's what you said last week. Welcome back stateside. I hope before next week we have a zombie apocalypse. Fingers crossed.
That's gonna get us where we need to be.
Yeah, it'll be fantastic. Well, then I will talk to you then. Have a good one.
You too, brother.
Bye.